Welcome to the Newsa-Cast YouTube channel. These Red Smith Banquet throwbacks are exclusive interviews of sports legends, powerful media personalities, and influential coaches. You won't find these anywhere else. Subscribe below and enjoy.
All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, you are about to hear the Red Smith Banquet from 2000 with Jon Miller. Jon Miller, as you know, was a baseball announcer for the Orioles and for the Giants. He's a legendary voice of baseball. You know, rank him right up there with all of those guys you listen to on the radio and TV. You know, for us here in Wisconsin, obviously Euchre's the gold standard, but Jon Miller is right up there. He's pretty well known for that. So this is YouTube, so you get to see the full Red Smith interview. But don't forget that this is part of our amazing interview with Alex Tank as well. And you can go to the podcast to check out that interview with Alex. Anywhere you get your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, who knows where, go check that out.
One of baseball's finest announcers and most recognizable voices, Jon Miller, is in his 12th season as anchor of ESPN Sunday Night Baseball and the 5th season as the voice of the San Francisco Giants on KNBR Radio and KTVU TV. Miller grew up in the Bay Area and began his Major League Baseball broadcasting career at age 22 with the Oakland A's in 1974. He later did radio and television for the Texas Rangers in 78 and 79 before moving on to Boston, where he spent from 80 to 82 in the Red Sox radio booth. In 1983, Miller moved the radio voice of the Baltimore Orioles, became the radio voice of the Baltimore Orioles, a position he held for 14 years until he began to work with San Francisco. During his 10-year tenure at ESPN, he has been... Oh, man.
Warm up the right-handed.
Right.
Warm up somebody in the pen.
Yeah. During his 10-year tenure at ESPN, he has been nominated 6 times for an ACE Award, emblematic of cable television excellence, and won the award in 91 and 96 for his play-by-play work. In 1998, Jon was chosen to do the worldwide radio broadcast for the World Series on ESPN Radio. Let's give a great Red Smith welcome to Jon Miller. Jon?
Thank you. Kirby, as always, a great pleasure to see you. And truly, traveling around baseball year after year, always one of the stops that I always most look forward to was going to the Metrodome, which was not a fun place, really. I mean, it's a dome overhead. It was always kind of dark and dank in there, but Kirby Puckett always lit it up and was always joyful. I mean, I can testify to that. I remember every time I'd walk in, I'd go to see Kirby at the batting cage and would always say, "Kirby, how you doing?" And Kirby would say, "Today is a fantastic day. I am doing the best you could possibly do." And I'd always say, "Well, how come? What's so great about today?" And he says, "Mel, you know that every day that I'm in this uniform is the best possible day it could ever be." And that's the way he went about his business. Kirby has a great passion for life, and he had a great passion for the game, and truly that's why I think he had so much success. Cal Ripken, I watched Cal for many years in Baltimore. Cal had that same kind of passion. I mean, he's a different kind of a personality than Kirby. And Cal, of course, all those years, never missing a game. 1991, the Orioles had a game at the Metrodome, and Cal was at shortstop. Kirby hit a double, and you know, the manager went out to talk to the pitcher at the mound. There's time out on the field. Cal went over to second base, and he and Kirby are kind of renewing acquaintances, talking over whatever's going on. And Kirby says, "How you doing, man? You don't look all that good." And Cal said, I have to level with you. I am really dragging. I am so tired. I really actually need a day off." And Kirby said, "Hey, cheer up. In just 4 more years, you can take a day off." Yeah. Well, I think all of you would join with me in saying that, echoing Kirby's sentiments, anytime, whether at the ballpark or here in Appleton, Wisconsin, that I'm with Kirby Puckett, well, that's a great day for me. Thanks for coming, Kirby. Great to see you. Now, when I got here tonight, Kirby, and we've known each other for many years, he walked over to me and he said, "Man, Mill, you have sort of this special look about you tonight. You got this aura. I mean, you're kind of all lit up. What happened? Something great must have happened in your life." And I wanted to share that with you now. I recently was at a banquet in Fort Worth, Texas, put on every year by Bobby Bragan, a great old baseball man. Been in the game for 60-something years. He puts on a charity banquet. It's in a big hall, much like this, at a ballroom at a hotel in Fort Worth. 1,800 people were there. There were a lot of Hall of Famers, great current stars as well. And the reason I guess I'm still kind of beaming is that Bobby Bragan got up in front of all of those people, and he paid me the greatest compliment anybody's ever paid me, and I'd like to share that with you tonight. Bobby got up there and he said, "Old Johnny Miller over here has been with ESPN these 10 years, and I tell you what, in that time, he has sold a lot of TVs in this country. And I know what I'm talking about because I sold mine." Oh, man. I mean, how often do you get a compliment like that? Now, it's great to see all the young people tonight, the students, and as they head out and already have had some great accomplishments. I look back at my young life and remember certain moments. Like Kirby, I think early on I really knew what I wanted to do. In fact, I can recall specifically one of those seminal moments, a turning point in my life when everything sort of fell into place and I knew what I wanted to do. I was 10 years old, and my dad took me to a ball game at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, a Giants-Dodger game. We sat on the upper deck on the first base side, and from that location, I could see into the Giants broadcast booth. And their broadcasters were the Hall of Famer Russ Hodges and his partner Lon Simmons, who still works baseball out there today. I work with Lon occasionally on Giants games now. They were great broadcasters. They brought the game alive. And I was a big fan of Giants baseball on the radio. We didn't have that many games on television at that time. So I had my little transistor radio with an earphone, and I was, with my glasses, looking down into the booth almost as much as I was actually watching the game. I was watching them broadcast the game. I was fascinated with what they were doing down there. And I'll never forget, Russ Hodges, great broadcaster, he was on the air and he says, "Now the 0-1 delivery, curveball, outside, ball one. 1 ball, 1 strike." Then he grabbed a handful of French fries. I mean, it must have been 27 French fries, and he put them all in his mouth at the same time and started chewing on these French fries. And, having seen him start to chew these fries, I realized I could actually hear him chewing the fries. He's still chewing the fries, and the next pitch comes in, and he says, "Now the 1-1 pitch, inside and low for a ball, 2-1. Doesn't miss a beat, still chewing on those damn fries. Now he picks up a cup of whatever it was, takes a big pull on that cup, and I said to myself, that's the life for me. Man. Yeah, one of those moments that changed a lifetime. Yeah. Now, one of the great things when you travel around at baseball, you can go to all the ballparks, and especially with the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, we go to all the stadiums every year in both leagues. That's ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, every Sunday, 7 Central Time. I don't want to, get into a big promo thing about it. If you're traveling back east, it'd be 8 o'clock. Out on the Pacific Coast, 5 o'clock. Anyway, I'm just, that's every Sunday at 7 Central is, I think, the main thing for you to remember. But, there's so many great ballparks in baseball. It's one of the distinguishing things about baseball is each ballpark is different. It has its own unique characteristics. And I was really kind of sad this past year to see the demise of Tiger Stadium, Detroit. As a broadcaster, that was always one of my favorite ballparks. I mean, it had a lot of unique things. Had the short home run porch in right field. The upper deck, was overhanging the field itself. High fly balls to right. You'd see that right fielder go all the way back to the wall. He's waiting for it, and all of a sudden it would catch that overhang for a home run. The main thing, though, that I liked about Tiger Stadium was that the broadcast booth was in the backstop. I mean, you were right in the backstop. I mean, imagine that, how close you are to the action at Tiger Stadium. Right in the backstop. And you could hear what was going on the field. And my very first year broadcasting baseball, 1974, with the Oakland Athletics, the A's came into Detroit in September and played a Tuesday night, twilight doubleheader. Started at, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The Tigers were a last-place team. School was back in, and nobody's at this game at 4:30 when we started. I mean, it's like 300 people in Tiger Stadium. And the A's had a catcher by the name of Gene Tennis, and Gene was a very fine player, World Series hero. And on this particular road trip, he had hit about 6 foul balls off his left foot. And before the game, because Tiger Stadium, the clubhouse, is so tiny, I mean, the manager's office, the trainer's room, everything is all in there with the lockers and everything together. And I happened to go by the trainer's room, and there's Gene Tennis. I mean, his foot, it looked like he had gangrene. I mean, his foot was green and yellow and purple and black. I mean, it was just horrendous looking. I thought they were going to have to amputate. I mean, it looked that bad. So the trainer's treating it and taping it, and, doing all these precautions on his foot. So right away, in his first at-bat, Gino's up there, and Mickey Lolich is on the mound for the Tigers, a left-hander with a great slider. I mean, that slider would bite right in, down and in on a right-handed hitter. And sure enough, he threw Gino this slider, and Gino swung at the pitch and fouled it right off his left foot. Oh, and he's like, ah! And he hits the deck like somebody shot him. And he's writhing in pain. And the A's trainer, Joe Romo, comes running out. And in those days, he used to have a little can, a spray can, filled with something called ethyl chloride that they'd spray in the area. It would do absolutely nothing for the injury. I think the main point of it was for the broadcaster, he's spraying the area with the ethyl chloride. Looks like Gino will be fine. So now Gino, finally, he sits up. He's still sitting on the ground in the batting cage, and he's just trying to, get everything back together, see if he can even stand up. And in the broadcast booth, we're broadcasting what's going on, and I make the brilliant statement, something to the effect of, well, it's obvious that Gino is still in a great deal of pain down there, at which point Gino turns to the booth and says, oh, that is very observant. I can't hide anything from you. Yes, in fact, I think Gino has confirmed now that it was tough there, and that the booth was so close. You had to watch always for foul balls. I mean, Ernie Harwell worked there all those years, and Ernie was smart. He put a protective net up in front of his booth so that he didn't have to worry about it. But we were only there for 3 days. It just seemed like we'd be kind of wimping out if we put a net up in front of our booth. So, but I mean, really, the foul ball, I mean, you say there's a swing and a foul. Ball. I remember one broadcaster there, somebody played a tape for me, and I can't remember who it was. He didn't work in the business that long. And they, some kind of a classic tape in Detroit, they had this visiting broadcaster and describing a foul ball coming back in the booth, and he said, oh, boy, that got here so fast. That ball came back, and it lodged up in the ball came into the booth and it went right into up into the stuff that, up there on the wall that, it got stuck up in the stuff that they make radio booths out of. And the next pitch came in, and he said, now the pitch comes in, and it's bunted back to the mound, foul. He didn't last that long, this particular broadcaster. I'm very fortunate on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball every Sunday at 7 Central. Sometimes I forget to mention that. To work with Joe Morgan, a great Hall of Famer, 22 years in the big leagues. I learned a lot about the game from Joe, and he's very professional, very prepared. Always has that great insight of the game. Every game I think you watch with Joe, you always come away feeling like you learned something about the game you didn't know before. Now, I've worked a lot of different cities with a lot of different partners, and I can really appreciate a guy like Joe because, my partners always weren't that great. I remember I used to work in Texas. I was the broadcaster for the Texas Rangers, and my partner down there was a kind of a good old boy Texas guy. And they only allowed him to do 2 innings of play-by-play per game on the radio. And the rest of the time he sat there smoking his pipe and just watching. He never said a word. But he had a book of stats that was the size of 2 phone books. And when he did those 2 innings, he was going to use those stats because he spent hours on it. We had a guy on the team named Al Oliver, who's a great left-handed hitter, great line drive hitter. And, he'd have stuff like, there's Al Oliver up here now. Al's hitting 329 for the year, but against this ball club, he's only hitting 328. Ooh. That is so revealing. Yeah. So he's always reading his stats, and the problem was he didn't often actually see what was going on in the field. And we had a left-handed hitter at the plate one night with a 2-strike count, and the pitch came in, and he swung at it, and he fouled it back into the upper deck. And my partner, I guess he didn't really see it, and he says, there's a swing and a miss, strike 3. So in radio, you don't go on the air and, show up your partner. What, are you blind? No, in radio, you make signals. So I just, very subtly said, psst, and when I signaled foul ball, and he says, no, now wait a minute. Now they're saying he foul tipped it. So I point to the upper deck, and he says, now they're saying he foul tipped it into the upper deck. Yeah. One day, Al Oliver was at the plate, left-handed hitter, and the Rangers at that time had a second baseman by the name of Bump Wills, the son of Maury Wills, and he was at first base, and like his dad, he was a base stealer. So he's at first, and the pitcher starts making pickoff throws over there, and Bump keeps diving back to the bag. So my partner's on the air broadcasting at the time, and he gets a little bored with all of these pickoff throws, so he starts reading some of his statistics. Well, just as he does that, the pitcher makes another pickoff throw to first, and the ball bounces in the dirt, skips past the first baseman, and rolls into the right field corner down in the bullpen. And Bump gets up out of the dirt and races all the way around to third base. Well, as the ball skips down the right field line, the crowd starts to roar, and my partner looks up from his stats, sees the ball rolling, and he says, Oliver rips one down the right field line. It's going to be extra bases for Al Oliver. There's Big Al around in second, and he's on his way to third. And Al Oliver pulls into third with a stained-up triple. It's a 3-bagger for Big Al Oliver. And that'll bring up Al Oliver. Yeah. So I can appreciate a guy like Joe who really knows his stuff. It's interesting being a baseball broadcaster, and truly, it is. It's the best job that you could ever have. Maybe being a player is a great job and so on and so forth, but I think being a broadcaster is even better because, we're the ones who get to say, "Oh man, Kirby screwed up on that play." Like Harry Carey. Here's Kirby Puckett, bases loaded, the pitch, pops it up. What's the matter with him? $6 million a year, and he pops it up. The thing I loved about Harry, Harry was, he loved the game. Harry had that great passion for the game, and you know, he was like the fan in the booth, and he was always telling it like it was, the way a fan might get upset about things when they didn't go right for his team. Remember the White Sox years ago when Harry was broadcasting White Sox games. In the outfield, they had Pat Kelly in left field. Pat Kelly had great speed, but a terrible arm. And in center field, they had Walt Williams, whose nickname was No Neck. Walt No Neck Williams. And in right field, they had Carlos May, and Carlos May, while in the service, had lost his thumb. So Harry's broadcasting the game, and a guy for the other team hits a shot into the alleyway in the outfield, and Harry says, "Into the alleyway, deep outfield. The White Sox outfield has no arm, no neck, no thumb. He might run all day." You know, the thing I really miss about Harry, Harry had truly what I always thought was like the great home run call. You know, guys have their home run calls and so on and so forth. But Harry was, you know, it might be, it could be, it is, hold. You know, it was fantastic. It was dramatic. It was just the way you felt at the ballpark when a guy would hit one. You thought maybe it had a chance, you know, could have it, you know, and he captured that. It was beautiful. And the thing about Harry was, you know, I often wondered with Harry, maybe you the same way. We all knew Harry on the air. He was on the air longer than anybody in history. Harry, I think, was first started broadcasting baseball in 1873. It's an incredible long time. He invented the whole thing. But I often wondered, Harry at home. Can you imagine, like, Harry waking up in the morning? Was he Harry when he woke up in the morning? Like the alarm clock went off, you know, Harry opened his eyes, and while still in bed, he like looks at the clock and says, "It might be, it could be, it is, it's time to get up." Yeah. I miss him, that's for sure. Now, about as far removed from style from Harry Carey as you could possibly get, and yet is also one of my all-time favorites as a great baseball broadcaster, is the legendary Vin Scully with the Dodgers. And yeah. Now, Vinny for many years did the Game of the Week on NBC. So we all around the country had a chance to hear Vinny. Now, most of us, you know, myself, Bob Uecker, we broadcast baseball. We say, now the 1-1 pitch, curveball, outside, ball 2, 2-1. We speak English, and we broadcast the game. But Vinny, now Vinny's got a lot more style. Vinny's got some elegance the way he does the game, right? Vinny's the 1-1 pitch on the way, curve low, ball 2. Yeah. You know, I always remember when they teamed up Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola. And I remember people said to me, says, you know, it seems like Joe Garagiola doesn't do that much talking anymore now that he's with Vinny. So I remember the next week watching the Game of the Week to see if I could figure out what was going on, why people kept telling me that they weren't hearing that much from Joe anymore. And that day, the Dodger game was on the Game of the Week. And Vinny's there saying, the 1-1 pitch to Dusty Baker, low, ball 2. 2-1 to Dusty Baker. And Dusty, who wears number 12, if you add 2 to that, and then divide by 2, you get the number 7. And this, of course, in a Mickey Mantle frame of reference, has great biblical significance. At least in a New Testament sense. In the Old Testament, perhaps at least in a Jobian frame, the number 40 would reign supreme. But interestingly enough, as Dusty himself said before the game, he said, you know, I hadn't thought of it. And there's Joe Garagiola sitting next to him going, you know, I mean, every day, and I was kind of inspired by Kirby. I mean, I try to remind myself every day that I'm at a big league ballpark that I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And I didn't always get to broadcast Major League Baseball. When I was younger, I broadcast other sports, you know, paying my dues, trying to make my way to the big leagues. I remember at one time I broadcast professional soccer. I was the voice of the San Jose Earthquakes of the North American Soccer League. Remember? And you know, it was kind of fun. I enjoyed broadcasting soccer. I enjoyed the sport. The team was made up of a lot of guys from Eastern Europe, and they were great guys. Mirko Liveric, Mirko Stojanovic, Momčilo Gavric, Miroslav Pavlovic, and they worked hard. They were great professionals, and they were studying English, trying to learn how to speak the language so that they could meet the kids and teach them how to play their sport. So they were doing everything that they could to learn the language. And on our broadcast, when the game was over, the hero of the game, the star of the game, was brought up to our booth for an interview. So, you know, it was tough because it was always one of those guys, it seemed like. And again, their English was just not that good. So, like one day, Momčilo Gavric got the game-winning goal with a minute to play. They brought him up to the booth. And I say, well, Momčilo, you scored the winning goal with a minute to play. Tell us what happened down there. Well, John comes over the ball. See? Yeah. Comes for me comes. You see? Yeah. As we say, rot podborodek paska kulicha. Well, Momčilo, that's pretty much the way we described it up here. So it was tough. It was a tough interview, and I was very excited near the end of the season for the stretch run. The Earthquakes made an acquisition to try to make the playoffs, and they signed a great star from the Glasgow Celtic in Scotland, Jimmy Johnston, whose nickname was the Flying Flea. He was this tall. I mean, in soccer, it doesn't matter how tall you are, right? I mean, the shorter the better. So they put him on a plane in Glasgow. He flew halfway around the world to San Jose, a place he'd never been. He took him off the plane, ran him over to the stadium, threw him in a uniform, and threw him out of the field, and he played the game minutes after arriving for the first time in his life in San Jose. And in true storybook fashion, Jimmy Johnston, the Flying Flea, scored the winning goal, broke the tie with a minute to go. So now the game is over, and they bring him up for an interview. And I'm so excited because he's from Scotland. He speaks English. Well, Jimmy, you scored the winning goal with a minute to play out there. Tell us what happened. Well, John, you can't get your boot or nay. Go on. Hoot, man, you can't get your snessy? I can't say. I don't know. But you can't hit it or get your boot, and that's it. Bloody hell. Well, Jimmy, that's pretty much the way we described it up here. By the way, I mean, this is such a great banquet. You're like the best group at a banquet I've ever seen. And I was actually forewarned about this because when I was asked to speak here, I just wanted to make sure. And for those of us in baseball who need that real background information, Lee Remmel, of course, knows this very well because he is one who always does the research. The guy who really is in the know about these kinds of things is Charlie K. Ali'ipuleole of the Big Island in Hawaii, of Anaia Ho'omalu Bay on the Kona coast. And by the way, if you're going to call him to get some information, be sure to ask for Charlie K. Ali'ipuleole of Anaia Ho'omalu, because a lot of people end up getting Chucky K. Ali'ipuleole from Kealakekua. And he doesn't know anything. So I'd been invited to come to the Red Smith dinner, and I said, Charlie K. Ali'ipuleole, the audience at the Red Smith dinner, what can you tell me about him? And here's what he said. He said, John, the audience at the Red Smith dinner, e pele e, ala nui kahiko, puka uahi, haule makehiki ho. Really? Anyway, I wanted to share that with you because I mean, I don't know, if you could be paid that high a compliment, from any other source. I mean, coming from Charlie K. Ali'ipuleole, that really means something. So, and I have to say that again, he was proved right. So, the thing with the Packers now, I know, people were a little bit disappointed they didn't make the playoffs. They were 8-8, and I just want to put this in a little bit of perspective because when I first went to Baltimore in 1983, I was very excited because I had, growing up in San Francisco as a kid, been a great fan of the Baltimore Colts. I guess because of Johnny Unitas and Lenny Moore and the great players they had at that time and those incredible battles they had with the Packers. I mean, I was a kid, and I mean, that was like legendary stuff. Bart Starr against Johnny U and so on. So now I moved to Baltimore and had a chance to see them play at Memorial Stadium. But by this time, their owner was a guy by the name of, I somehow blocked it out of my mind. I know the name, but in Baltimore, we didn't have a whole lot of use for him. I think he was known in Baltimore as the Drunken Idiot. Anyway, and he moved the team out of Baltimore, and the sorry story. But you want to talk about a disappointing year. I mean, this great franchise that had sold out every game for 16 consecutive years. And in 1983, the final game of the year, the Colts played at home against the New England Patriots. The Colts record going into the game was 2-13. The Patriots came in with a record of 1-14. I mean, not a real good matchup, number one. It's December, it's cold, it's wet, the field is muddy. There's about 20,000 people at the game, and it's like the worst game in history. The opening kickoff is fumbled, then there's like penalties, then fights start breaking out on the field. People, near the end of the first half in the stands start throwing tomatoes and whatnot out on the field, which, of course, I guess many of them must have anticipated it would be bad, or why would they have brought the tomatoes with them? So this game is just a terrible exhibit of NFL football. And finally, in the fourth quarter, another fight breaks out on the field, all these punches being thrown. Finally, they break that up, and New England, they just say, the heck with it. And the entire New England team leaves the field, leaving the Colts as the only team on the field. 3 plays later, the Colts scored on a field goal. It was partially blocked. And as the official signals good, he shoots off the gun, ending the game, and the Colts lost by 1. So you want to talk about disappointing? Let's talk disappointing. In fact, I remember in Baltimore in 1988, I mean, the Orioles had this great success over the years, a very successful franchise. And then in the 80s, things started going bad for them. And every year for 5 consecutive years, not only did they have a bad year, but their record was worse than the year before, every year for 5 consecutive years, until in 1988, they did the impossible. The Orioles lost the first 21 games of the season. 0-21, which is, I mean, anybody who's been around baseball any time at all knows that that's impossible. I mean, a college team could go out there and probably win a couple of ball games, but the Orioles were 0-21. They finally went to the old Comiskey Park in Chicago, beat the White Sox to end the 21-game losing streak, after which they then lost 13 of the next 18, making them the only team in history to start a season historically bad and then go into a slump. Yeah. That's a bad year. Now, you know, when we were in spring training, I guess I should have known better, but I'm always filled with high hopes in spring training that, you know, this could be the year and a lot of things are going to come together, and I guess look through rose-colored glasses. And I felt that way about the Orioles in '88. They made a lot of changes. They had a lot of guys from other organizations, which, you know, usually is not good when you have, like, you know, 8 guys in their 7th organization who've been released 6 times. But, you know, I thought, hey, I think those guys, now that they're with the Orioles, it should come together for them. So we left spring training and flew back to Baltimore in the team charter. And I'm sitting with one of our new players, and we land at the Baltimore-Washington International Airport, and we're kind of taxiing along the runway. You know how you do when you're heading to your gate, and the plane's only going like, 4 miles an hour, hardly moving at all. And there's all these little baggage trucks and little fuel trucks zipping around the runways. Well, all of a sudden, our right wing on our charter scrapes the top of one of those little fuel trucks. The plane stops, and alarms go off, and there's sirens, and red lights are flashing, and pretty soon, you know, all of these fire engines are out there. I mean, absolutely nothing happened, but it was a very exciting spectacle to see. And while we're watching all of this out of the window of the plane, this new guy on the team who's sitting next to me, he looks out, he finally says, you know, I'm glad that didn't happen while we were in the air. And I looked at him for a second. I said, you know, that's a good point. I mean, until you mentioned that, I never realized why they didn't allow those fuel trucks to fly around overhead. Man, that was a bad year. Now, things got so bad for the Orioles that year that during that losing streak, they started being compared to the original New York Mets, the 1962 New York Mets, an expansion team. The Mets that year lost more games than any team in 20th century Major League history. 40 wins and 120 losses. 40 and 120. Now, the Mets had a lot of recognizable names on the team. I mean, Gil Hodges was on that team, Charlie Neal. They had a left fielder, a home run hitter by the name of Frank Thomas. And Richie Ashburn was on that team. Roger Craig was a pitcher for him. The problem was most of those guys were, you know, 53 years old. I mean, they were big names, but they should have retired like 20 years before, except for Richie Ashburn. Richie, now in the Hall of Fame, a great center fielder, and for 15 years in Philadelphia, he was a perennial Gold Glove candidate and was always one of the best center fielders around. And in 15 years, not one time had he ever had a collision on the field with another player going for a fly ball. Not ever in 15 years. With the original Mets, 7 times in 2 weeks, 7 times in 14 games, going for a pop fly, he collided, and always with the same guy, always with the shortstop, a guy by the name of Elio Chacon. Same thing every time. Pop fly, shallow center. Chacon would race out from shortstop. Ashburn would come charging in from center, see that he had it, he'd start shouting, I got it, I got it. Reach out to catch it, and Chacon would crash into him, knock him flying, knock the ball loose. I mean, Richie had cracked ribs. I mean, he had teeth that had broken off. He had stitches. He had abrasions. I mean, it was a bloody mess. 7 times this happened in 2 weeks. So finally, he went to a teammate by the name of Joe Christopher. And he said, Joe, what am I going to do? And Joe Christopher spoke Spanish. And he said, listen, I don't think Elio Chacon knows I got it. You've got to say, yo lo tengo. So Richie writes this down, yo lo tengo. And he starts practicing. You know, he goes home, he's sitting in front of the TV with his wife, and he says, yo lo tengo, yo lo tengo, yo lo. His wife says, Richie, sweetheart, would you like something to eat? He says, yo lo tengo, yo lo tengo, yo. Now, the next day he's in the ballpark. He's in his locker before the game. He's like chanting a mantra like a Buddhist, you know, yo lo tengo, yo lo tengo. Finally, he gets up, and he's heading out to the field for the game, passes Chacon's locker, says, Elio, yo lo tengo, man, and heads out into the field. Chacon gets up, looks at him, and says, no problem, Richie. So now, sure enough, in the very first inning, a guy hits a pop fly into shallow left center field. And Chacon zips out from shortstop going for it. Ashburn comes charging in from center field and starts shouting, yo lo tengo, yo lo tengo. And sure enough, Chacon veers off out of his way. And Ashburn now, with a big smile on his face, reaches out, makes the catch. And then the left fielder, Frank Thomas, who spoke no Spanish, crashed into him. It was a triple. And there's Thomas and Ashburn all lying in a heap out on the grass at the polo grounds. Their legs are all tangled around each other. There's blood. And Thomas looks at Ashburn and he says, Richie, what the hell is a yellow tango? Yeah, it was bad. Well, I'm looking forward to the baseball season, as always. I mean, that's the best of times for anybody in baseball. I mean, spring training, and then you start the longest season. I mean, baseball is great because it's every day. If you're a fan, it's like having a chance to have a vacation whenever you want it every day. I mean, the box scores, you know, you use 15, 20 minutes. We used to see how many hits that Kirby had the night before, see if McGuire and Sosa went deep, see how many hits Tony Gwynn had. And it takes you out of your normal routine for the 15, 20 minutes where you check out the standings and the top 10 hitters, or you catch a game on the radio or television, or you go out to the ballpark. You care about the team, you root for them. And the beautiful thing is that even if they lose and it was a bad game, you know, it doesn't affect your life. I mean, it didn't mean you can't pay your phone bill or anything like that. So you get a chance to have this little vacation from real life and all the troubles and trials. And that's why I look forward to the baseball season, because it's always there whenever you want it. And of course, having the greatest job in history, I get to go to the ballpark every day. One of my favorites, and I have to admit it, is the historic Yankee Stadium. I mean, so much history. It's a huge, impressive-looking ballpark. And you know, one of the great things at Yankee Stadium, when you walk in, the PA man, and literally, he's been the public address announcer at Yankee Stadium for 50 years. His name is Bob Shepard. He's tall, he's elegant, he looks like royalty. He has sort of a patrician look about him. And you really know you're in this historic big ballpark in the Bronx when Bob makes his first announcement that day. He comes on, he says, "Good afternoon, ladies, and gentlemen, welcome to Yankee Stadium, for today's game between." Now, the only thing is, it's like the fourth inning before he finishes the lineups. You know, he speaks very slowly. I mean, it's great. It's just very slow. But he's got a very peculiar style. Whenever a hitter's up for the first time, he always announces his number and his name and then repeats the number at the end. He's like, number 51, the center fielder, Bernie Williams. Number 51. And it's incredible. I mean, Yankee fans are conditioned to this, right? I mean, they want to cheer for Bernie Williams, and he says, Bernie Williams, and they're like, number 51. I mean, they wait for him to say that number the second time. Now, I often wondered what Bob actually sounded like in person. I was so curious after all these years. And this past September, we were in Yankee Stadium for a Sunday night game, and the next morning, I arranged to meet Bob at his favorite diner in Manhattan for breakfast. And it was incredible. We're looking at our menus, and the waitress comes to our table, and Bob looks up and he said, good morning. Yeah. It's not the sound system at Yankee Stadium. I mean, Bob actually echoes. It's incredible. So he looks at the lady and says, welcome to our table. Today, I'd like a breakfast number one with whole wheat toast. Number one. You know, he also does the New York Giants football games. And he does it exactly the same way. Can you imagine that? I mean, next time you see a Packers game from the Giants Stadium, listen for him in the background. It's astounding. He's a carpenter, the ball carrier, a gain of three to the Giants, 42. Second down and third down. Then on the other hand, there's Bob Casey, the voice of the Metrodome in Minnesota. I don't know if you've ever been over there to a game, but I mean, Bob is ticked off. I mean, he is the anti-Bob Shepard. I mean, Bob Casey, and he's been the Twins PA man since the second year of the franchise, going all the way back to the old Metropolitan Stadium. And, you know, at the Metrodome, the organist plays some music for 10 minutes or so before the game, and it always seems like he's playing like 40 minutes worth of music in just the 10 minutes allotted. Like he plays everything like 4 times normal speed, you know. And he finally finishes, and then Bob Casey makes his first announcement, and it's always right after that last note. Bob comes on and says, "Thank you!" And good evening. Welcome to the Metrodome. There's no smoking in this building. Don't line up! Here are tonight's starting lineups. Write them down or you'll be shot! As I understand it, it's very good for program sales. Give me a program, quick! Now, one day in the old Metropolitan Stadium, the Red Sox were playing there. This is back in the 60s. True story. They had received some kind of a bomb scare at Metropolitan Stadium, and they had the bomb squad out, and the dogs are sniffing and all this kind of stuff. And right in the middle of the game, about the 6th inning or so, they decide they want the game stopped, and they want everybody evacuated from Metropolitan Stadium. And they go up to Bob Casey's booth, and they tell Bob that he's got to make this announcement. And Bob's, yeah, I know just how to handle it. Leave it to me. So Bob goes on the PA and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. Listen up. You're going to have to evacuate Metropolitan Stadium. Please leave in a quiet and orderly fashion. And don't panic, but there's a bomb! Oh, yeah. Well, it is a great treat to have been here tonight at the Red Smith dinner, and it's a proud night for me to have been invited here. And it kind of reminds me of an old story involving Gil McDougall with the Yankees back in the 50s and Yogi Berra. And Gil McDougall was a very well-read guy and a very talkative guy. And around the batting cage, he was a lot like Kirby. He was like talking to everybody. And this particular day, he's talking to Yogi, and he says, "Yogi, I read in the New York Times this morning that yesterday in Dublin, Ireland, Yogi, they had the election for mayor, and a Jewish man won the election for mayor in Dublin, Ireland." Can you imagine that, Yogi? A Jewish man won the mayoral election in Dublin, Ireland. What do you think of that, Yogi? And Yogi looks at him and says, only in America. So I'm mindful of that tonight, having been invited here, a great audience, and with Kirby Puckett in attendance, and all the great young athletes and students here as well, that myself, a former soccer broadcaster, could be invited to speak to you. Only in America could that happen. Thanks very much, and we'll see you at the ballpark.
Please subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when we post another great episode or interview. Download the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your support.